The 2025 MLS season and the MLS Cup final in the books, and it will be the most viewed final ever. We don't have the data for that, but we can assume that with all the numbers, and in large part, there's no way from running from this whatsoever, not that we want to, but this is Lionel Messi affected, and the star power in players, which is very rare. There's a handful of players that can certainly do this, and no one could do it as well as Lionel Messi. Can change the trajectory of a league and can draw millions upon millions of people to tune in, which is truly stunning, but that's what we have with Messi. And we're going to break down all of that and take a little bit of a look at what the future looks like for Major League Soccer and how this really is, for all intents and purposes, a launching pad. But we'll look at the Soccer OG. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. You might have noticed a lot more posting going out there. Check out some of the interviews. A good one with Christian Roldan talking about the World Cup draw. We'll have a very close look at the U.S. group coming up in later this week. So stay tuned for all of that. The final score from Shea Stadium, Inter Miami 3, the Vancouver Whitecaps 1. This was a very entertaining final, in large part because of the Whitecaps, who looked like they had Inter Miami on the ropes. It was 1-1. They hit the post 3 times. The possession numbers were pushing 70%. Not that that means anything, but the passing numbers were great. It was one-way traffic, and it looked like Inter Miami was hanging on for dear life. Javier Mascherano going to his bench. This wasn't like a challenge Inter Miami had faced, but it just goes to show what a compelling final that we certainly had there. And you saw what it meant. The Whitecap players afterwards in tears because they made 2 mistakes, and those 2 mistakes were punished at the highest level because of Lionel Messi. And this is, we'll talk a lot about Messi here, but this is why Lionel Messi can probably go for a few more years. He really didn't do much in this game. Sits there, he moves, and the law of averages say that if he gets that one play, it's not going to always lead to a goal, but we've seen it time and time again. He had that moment, the little ball over the top to Rodrigo de Paul. It was game, set, and match. And this is why I think he can play for a few more years, because if you can protect him, which Inter Miami did a really nice job of, heading to this final with the benching of Luis Suarez, you could almost say Nashville SC, because they demanded this suspension, opened the door for Inter Miami to lift the trophy because they were a much better team with Luis Suarez coming off the bench. And now you had this team that was able to protect Lionel Messi a little better and still have him on the field. Terrifying teams. Messi, by the way, still had some moments in this game where he had this dead sprint. He's got legs going, and everything about Messi has to be applauded. I think this is one of the best years he's ever had. To do this at 38, play almost every game. This is almost 60 games for Inter Miami this season. They went through hell and high water, and they ended up being the best team. So this certainly has to be applauded, because the rule of thumb in MLS, if you make a CONCACAF Champions Cup semi or a final, you undermine your MLS Cup campaign. And it did for a little bit, but Inter Miami always was able to maintain that level. And Lionel Messi shows why he's so valuable to this team. They're going to continue to, evolve, because Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba will be moving on. They've announced their retirement. You'd have to think Luis Suarez, while he may not retire, may see the end of the road at Inter Miami, although they do want to sign him, but it has to be as a luxury player, somebody that you could bring in for situations. But, the future is now, and these young players, and you see what that also does for Inter Miami. Matteo Silvetti and Tadeo Ascende, young players who get to share the field with Messi and work their tail off for him. And then, of course, Rodrigo de Paul, who comes over, who had a masterful game, not just because of the goal, wanting to play with Messi. One day Messi will leave, but there will still be something with this Inter Miami team, who are moving into an incredible new stadium, that will feel aglow because Messi was here. You can see the spray paint on the wall there in Miami. So very deserving. Vancouver Whitecaps, a great finalist. I thought it was a wonderful game, as I said earlier, because sometimes these finals can get a bit drudge. So that wasn't this one. Good atmosphere there. Not the best facility, because we have so many great facilities in Major League Soccer, and this one, that's last rites for that park in Fort Lauderdale as they move down to Miami, which at Freedom Park, which looks spectacular, and a long list of great soccer-specific stadiums. Which brings me to the Whitecaps, we were hearing like 20, 25,000 people at a watch party at BC Place. And then they had 2,000 fans there. Don Garbert was asked about this and about the state of it, and he was very explicit. Sometimes Don Garbert will, avoid answering the question directly. When you hear him answer it directly like that, you've got to really stand to your attention. And he said it. He goes, if they don't get out of that stadium lease situation, it doesn't seem like they're going to remain in Vancouver, which would be a huge shame. Not only because Vancouver is at the best stage the club has ever had. You see the love affair. Everyone in Vancouver wanted a part of this. This wasn't someone walking around the city going, what are the Whitecaps? They all know. That is the panacea, right, for MLS, that you go into a city and everyone knows about the soccer team. They're not fifth down the pecking order to everybody else. So it would be a huge shame for that. This is, it's just something you got to look at and say, hopefully it can be fixed. And I got to tell you, I've been doing some research on these lease stadiums. So like MLS owns the clubs own the soccer-specific stadiums. They get to do all the business. They get to make money when an NWSL team or a sporting team wants to use that facility, or if they want to rent it out for a commercial. BC Place, Vancouver's paying an arm and a leg to play there, and it has its issues for soccer with the turf, etc. And it's too big of a stadium for the Whitecaps. They need a smaller venue. But having to sign that big check every week, it's got to make sense. So the city of Vancouver's got to concede a little bit here. And I don't know if they're not going to get a better location than BC Place right there in the middle of Vancouver. So if they get a stadium, it's going to probably be off the beaten path, which would be a disappointment. So it seems like a real conundrum. I hope for the best. I'm bracing for the worst with Vancouver, and there are cities that would grab that franchise. And it wouldn't just be bad for Vancouver. It would be bad for Soccer Canada. They'd be down to 2 teams in a league where there's a lot of detriments to have Canadian teams because Canada does its own business. They have their own broadcast. People watch the final on TSN. They don't watch it like all the American clubs and so much other stuff because it's in another country. So I want the Whitecaps. They bring great history. Hopefully that can be resolved, but it was a bit of a wet blanket during this final where everything else is in such celebratory mode for the Whitecaps, except for the fact also that they lost the game, because you never know when you get back to a final. So now we move towards the future. And I know a lot of people looked at Inter Miami as the villains. And deep down inside, even though Miami is my hometown, I was hoping the Whitecaps would do it just because we figured Inter Miami is going to be good again next year, the favorites to win MLS Cup. I just really like the Whitecaps, but we all kind of pull against them a little bit. But the reality is, Inter Miami winning opens up a lot of doors, and this is what I mean. They are the club with the most ambition. They are the club that signed Lionel Messi, and there's a few other clubs that are right there with them, but no one's doing it at Inter Miami's level. And we all should be indebted. All of us who cover Major League Soccer, who are fans of the American sport, are indebted that they are able to bring Messi and continue to push the boundaries to be a really good team and a global entity that is drawing eyeballs to MLS. They're going this way. Some of the MLS clubs are going with them, and some are not. And as they push through those doors, this is a moment for the league. And you don't get too many of this. Again, this is I don't know what the number. Someone said 100 million global audience. I don't know, which is crazy to even think about. But it's going to be a lot because of Messi. And because of all the doors opened up for Apple TV on where you could get it. Because it had a terrestrial, see the number. I don't think it's going to be out of this world on Fox because that's a tough day and that's why you have the schedule change. To have that final on December 6th, it gets lost. So much stuff going on with college football and other sports. Mainly college football. So here we are in the moment. Whether you like Inter Miami or not, they are leading the way. And who goes through that threshold is going to be very telling. But I will say this. MLS deserves credit for a lot of things. The product on the field is better. I mean, you just look at some of the data points with regards to, let's just say from 15 years ago, the passing percentage, the goals. It's nice on the eyes. I watch games from everywhere. You can't say that about a lot of good European games or leagues. It's not. They are doing well. 15 years ago, the MVP was David Ferreira or Chris Wondolowski a couple years later. Now the MVP is Lionel Messi, or maybe it's going to be Son Heung-min or Thomas Muller or a really plucky top European player or a guy like Evander or a great young player coming up. it's just different. These things you see about the league are massively improved. The concept that MLS is now changing and evolving in so many ways, to the point where they are going to make the schedule change to a European calendar. My only issue with the schedule change, I wish it happened sooner. But this is what I think about MLS. It's tough for things to get done because you have to get the sign off on all 30 teams. And the fact that this schedule change happened means that those top clubs are really starting to carry a little more weight, which they should, because this is the moment. And the fact that they did the schedule change tells me that there's going to be some sort of change in the salary cap. And I've said this in the past. In 5-6 years or so, maybe a little bit more, the talk and maybe the actual execution of promotion relegation, I think, is possible if it makes sense for this league. And I think there's enough reasons there for it to make sense. So there is as we go through the portal of the future of MLS, this is going well. Look, the coaching, we talk about the players. Wilfried Nancy just got a job at Celtic, which, by the way, I'm not saying the SPL is a step up. It's not. Celtic job is a launch pad to getting to the Premier League. We saw that with Anton Postecoglou, guys like Brendan Rodgers able to go back and forth. It's closer to the Premier League and they can see it there. But Jesper Sorensen, Pascal Janssen, good American coaches, good foreign coaches, that is going to continue because this league is now known, and we all know what's going to happen after the World Cup. It's going to get even bigger with the league embedded. I know that this is far from perfect, this league. I know there's a lot of things that have to be addressed, but when you look at the stadium, you needed someone to run through there. And Inter Miami and the Mas brothers and David Beckham are those guys. LAFC is with them. San Diego FC, keep an eye on them. I think they're going to be with them as well. And then Atlanta United, if they can get their stuff, there's enough teams there, 6 or 7, that is really to spend the money and bring in the high-profile players. And then the next group that will have to do it. And then you gotta appease the top teams. So this was a very important date, MLS Cup 2025, and Inter Miami winning it opens the door for what should be a much brighter future for everyone that covers MLS. I would also say the thing that Apple TV is getting out, I know some people are trying to paint it as this is an alarm system. I know nothing about nothing. I don't want to pry. But to me, with everything that is going in there, I believe that that is an out where they want to look to see if they can get a better deal with a linear partner and then have a handshake agreement with Apple. Why would Apple TV want to get out of that? If they wanted to, they could get out early, which they had that opportunity. But they're giving more MLS money, and they see the value of getting a better linear deal, and I think there's going to be a marketplace for that. So while some people may say, ring the alarm bells, I really see it the exact opposite, and I believe I'm right when you see what's being happened and the stadiums that are being built and the money that's being spent. MLS looking pretty good. It's a slow ride, as we always say, but it's a ride moving upwards. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back. Stick around. This channel's going to be very busy.